Navarro is under siege by pirates. He's asking for help.
Why are you really here?
They're about to blow Navarro to hell.
Then call in a strike. We don't even have ships.
Coruscant doesn't care. Karga's your friend. You won't let him die.
What's in it for you?
The New Republic has to know that the Empire is growing again.
And you think the Pirate King has something to do with it?
I can't say for sure, but something doesn't smell right. Look, it's not your fight. I just came to tell you your friend is in danger, and I thought you should know.
Once again, Bucketheads, Mayvar Tigar. Welcome to the 199th Pirate Popping episode of Mandovision. Nargai Tom, and thank you so much for checking out this small, independent Star Wars podcast. We're so glad you're here. Remember, the best way to reach out to us is, of course, on social media at Mando_Vision, Twitter and Instagram. Email the show, mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and share the show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. How is everyone doing? Happy Star Wars Wednesday, and it's a big Star Wars Wednesday today. Another new episode of The Mandalorian, Chapter 5 is out, and that's what we're here to talk about right now. And then we'll be back with a pretty quick turnaround, I would imagine, if everything holds the way I think it will, to come back and discuss the 2-episode finale, Season 2 finale for Star Wars The Bad Batch. Really big episodes this week for both shows. The Bad Batch, in particular, because the season finale it kind of brings everything to a head for what they've been doing, but we'll talk about more about that later on in our subsequent next episode. Today we're focused on The Mandalorian, which is another episode where, it's this season of The Mandalorian, I feel like, has become insanely divisive amongst people. I mentioned last time how, some people seem to get really upset with the runtime on the episodes. How the kind of waxes and wanes. Some are really long, some are too short by their opinions, and it's aside from that, I mean, people are sort of going back and forth about the content, the story they're telling this season. There's a lot of table setting. There's a lot of putting the pieces into place, because this season of the Mandalorian story has pulled back the lens. Right, we're seeing the galaxy as in a bigger context than we had in the first 2 seasons. By and large, season 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian, a smaller scale, tighter focus on our titular hero for the show and his journey with Grogu. But now in this season, we're pulling that camera back. We're taking a step back to see what the galaxy at large looks like, and that has allowed. I shouldn't say allowed, but because we're now incorporating more elements of the Star Wars galaxy at large, there's a bit of setting the pieces that has to be done, right? Not every single person who's watching The Mandalorian has paid attention to every little facet and detail of Star Wars canon and lore of the years, By and large, people still haven't gone back and watched Star Wars The Clone Wars or Star Wars Rebels to see how those shows have sort of forecasted what's coming up in this show. So there's a little bit of setting required, right? Of kind of getting everything on the table and putting it out there so that the audiences aren't baffled by what they're seeing, right? You got to kind of reset the table, and they have to do it. It's not an easy task, I would imagine. The task that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni and the rest of the creatives behind The Mandalorian have is to give us all these elements, representing them to the hardcore fans, but making them accessible to the new fans who, trying to make them feel like they don't have to know every little single thing that's gone on in comics and graphic novels and animated series in the past. So I think there's a lot of, complaining about that. And, everyone is entitled to their opinion. And if they're not enjoying the show, they're not enjoying the show. And there's not a lot that I can say about that to persuade them. If they're kind of cashing out, they're kind of cashing out. And that's their prerogative. But I do think they're missing out, because I do think that all of this is going to pay off very, very nicely in the final 3 episodes of the season, because big things are afoot. If you're paying attention, if you're watching the details, a lot of times, the word that gets thrown around on the internet is like another filler episode, quote unquote. No. It's all gonna land. Whether it lands successfully or not, again, we can determine at the end of the season. But they're putting the pieces into place for something big. And you either have to go along with the journey, or you cash out, right? Maybe you liked The Mandalorian when it was, more Western inspired, more of a standard serial, right? And more tightly focused on The Mandalorian working his way through this post Return of the Jedi version of the Star Wars galaxy. But they have decided to integrate more closely to the galaxy at large, to sort of connect with the grander Star Wars mythology. And I think it's an interesting way to do it, to sort of talk about the post Return of the Jedi, the fledgling New Republic era, through the eyes of these Mandalorians who were outcasts and scattered and hidden throughout much of the time of the rebellion, throughout much of the time in the battle against the Empire. And I think we need to give that a little bit of breathing room. Now, by and large, if you were listening to this podcast, you and I are probably on the same page. We're in for a penny, in for a pound. We are here for the ride. We want to see the journey land, and we want to see where our heroes and our favorite bucket-headed culture ends up at the end of this episode. Or, I'm sorry, at the end of this season, because a lot of big things have been teased. But we are also looking at the Star Wars galaxy as a whole, because it seems like we are setting up the table for the rise of the First Order as well. This season has been documenting the incredible lack of functionality in the New Republic already, and it would be irresponsible of Filoni and Favreau just to pretend like they shouldn't be putting some of the pieces into place for the rise of the First Order, the rise of Snoke, I would imagine, as well, which we'll probably talk about later on in this episode of the show. So, again, if you're a fan of this podcast, if you are a member of Buckethead Nation, I suspect we're all on the same page. But if you have any concerns, if you have any questions, you know how to reach out to me. I'd love to hear your opinion on where we're going with the show. Are you still enjoying this season of The Mandalorian as much as you did 1 and 2? I think that's ultimately the real question. Or has things changed? Because I know a lot of people out there, we talked about it a little bit last week, they're having a hard time going back to the world, to the galaxy, to the time frame, to the flavor of The Mandalorian after watching the Andor series, which was a stark contrast to the way this show is filmed, shot, and tells its stories. So I'm definitely curious how you're all feeling about these things. If you go on the internet and you see the sort of wide array of opinions and thoughts on this season, a Collider put out an article about why The Mandalorian doesn't feel important anymore. And I say hogwash to that. It's hogwash, it's poppycock, it's balderdash. The Mandalorian is just as important. You, as an audience member, just need to sort of well, I shouldn't. I don't want to come out and attack the person who wrote that article. Their opinion is valid for them. I just disagree with it. But yes, indeed, I will reiterate: it is poppycock. It is balderdash. It is hogwash. All right, let's talk about this week's episode. Enough of me rambling on and on and on about the internet. Good Lord. Who thought I'd have to spend 10 minutes opening a podcast telling people to be wary of the internet? Oh, well, as if we didn't know that already. This week, Star Wars The Mandalorian, Season 3, Episode 5, Chapter 21, The Pirate. Original air date March 29th, 2023. Written by everyone's good friend Jon Favreau. Directed by Peter Ramsey. Our plot this week: the people of Navarro need protection from rampant pirate attacks. I'm not sure how rampant it is. It's really just one big one. One big one that does a lot of bad things to it. Our cast this week: Pedro Pascal is the Mandalorian, along with Lateef Crowder and Brendan Wayne. Katie Sackhoff is Bo-Katan Kryze. Carl Weathers as Grief Karga. Paul Sun-Hung Lee returns as Captain Carson Teva. Katie Ann O'Brien returns as Elia Kane. Tim Meadows as Colonel Tuttle. Emily Swallow is the Armorer. And we get Gorian Shard, once again voiced by the great Nunzu Anuzi, whose voice is just so distinctive and so lovely. Welcome back to the fold, Steve Blum as Zeb Aurelios, the live-action debut of Zeb. It's happening. It's happening. It's happening. We also get cameos from Mandalorian alumni, the directors themselves: Deborah Chow, Rick Famuyiwa, Dave Filoni as Sash Ketter, Jib Dodger, and Trapper Wolf. Remember, they played X-Wing pilots back in Season 1. They get the cameo in this a little bit, too. And you also get Tate Fletcher as Paz Vizsla, bringing his big, bearing presence once again to the screen. Oh, boy. All right, so let's go ahead. Let's talk about this episode. But you know what we have to do first. In case you're not a Children of the Watch member, which means you have your bucket on all the time. It is that time for us to strap on our buckets. Let's go.
The question we should be asking ourselves is why? Why should we lay our lives down yet again? Because we are Mandalorians. I have had my disagreements with this man, but he risked his life to save my son. And Bo-Katan Kryze did not give up on my child's life, even when the rest of us did. These two are asking us to take up arms in the name of a brighter future. And I, for one, will take up arms to fight by their side. This is the way.
This is the way. This is the way.
Come on, don't tell me that didn't get your blood pumping when he says, "We are Mandalorians." Come on, that's what we're here for, right? That's what we're here for. Give it to us. Give us that moment. Anyways, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. This episode, we open back on Navarro. Grief Karga, the High Administrator of Navarro, doing high administrating things. He's meeting with his civil engineers. They're doing some stuff. They're planning the future. They're laying the groundwork for a bigger, better Navarro. When the ominous presence of Pirate King Gorian Shard's ship, which we saw back in the first episode of this season, enters above the city and issues demands to Grief Karga, a former partner or perhaps employee of Gorian Shard at some point. It sounds like from their history that Grief Karga contracted with Gorian Shard for the funds he needed to acquire Navarro, because they talked about the pirate treasure that they had back in the day and how Karga used his cut to get the planet, blah, 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 all these things, right? So their history's established. The sort of interesting thing I asked myself about this was, because again, this was all set up. This episode's paying off a lot of things that were set up in the very first episode of Season 1 this year. I'm sorry, of Episode 1 this season. Why exactly did Gorian Shard take so long to sort of put his spring into action, right? You have to imagine there's been a decent amount of time between what transpired in Episode 1 of this season to here in Episode 5. And the only thing I could come up with, the only thing I sort of wondered, and again, this is one of the questions, maybe it's not maybe I'm thinking too hard on things. Maybe I'm looking a bit. I'm going deeper than maybe I should. But like Carson Teva suggests to us, is that perhaps there is a connection between the pirate activity and this sort of resurgent empire that we might be seeing, right? And sort of what I came away was, well, maybe he was waiting for orders to begin this bombardment. Perhaps there is someone pulling some strings, as we've been hinting, as we've been alluding to, and the Gorian Shard is part of this plot as well in ways that we don't quite fathom at this moment. So regardless of all that, though, a bombardment begins the planet. The citizens of Navarro scatter. They evacuate the city. Grief Karga leads them out into like the lava flats where they can wait out the siege by the pirates, right, who are now going to take over their city and turn it into Tortuga from Pirates of the Caribbean. And hey, it's Disney, right? Why can't we have a Star Wars version of Pirates of the Caribbean? I guess, right? But Grief does not evacuate the city before he's able to dispatch a message to Captain Carson Teva of the New Republic. And we've seen Captain Teva a couple different times now throughout the Mandalorian. We saw him in the trailer for this season. We knew his return was imminent. And he seems to be one of the few guys paying attention to what's going on in the Outer Rim. And despite his concerns, the New Republic seems to not take it very, very seriously. As we meet up with Carson Teva, we go to a New Republic base on a very scenic, tropical world. X-Wings, Y-Wings, A-Wings, all of them just hanging around. They're doing their business. And we go into a New Republic air base, essentially. And it's it's sort of Star Wars version of Top Gun in this thing, The pilots are hanging around. They're shooting the equivalent of pool. They're playing cards. They're drinking at the bar with the Snivian server. And Teva himself has the classic like leather bomber jacket, right? Like I'm trying to think if we've seen something similar to this in Star Wars before. And the closest I could think of it was Poe's leather jacket, but he doesn't wear it like over his X-Wing suit, at least not to my recollection. But I thought it was an interesting kind of note for this airbase. Kind of ringing true to Lucas's inspiration of World War II films that he injected into the original Star Wars trilogy. So kind of fun to see Carson Teva in that bomber jacket. This is also the sequence where we see our directors, Dave Filoni, Deborah Chow, and Rick Famuyiwa, kind of cameo in the foreground of some shots. It's also where we get the live-action debut, as we discussed earlier, of Garazeb Aurelius himself, our favorite Lasat from the Rebels crew, making his live-action debut, once again voiced by Stephen Bloom. And that was quite the treat. What a wonderful surprise that was, and a sort of another reminder that, okay, in case you didn't know, the cast of Rebels is coming into live action, and it looks like Zeb will just be part of that as well. And this is maybe sort of our first effort at getting Zeb on the screen in a real way, because you have to imagine he's going to be part of the Ahsoka show as well when that takes off later this year. So a really nice treat to see him. The only rub I had with it was, Zeb was a big bad character who, is used to being in the rebellion, but it seems like maybe he's softened in his time since the end of the war, right? Because I feel like the old Zeb would have gone with Teva and they would have gone on a bombing run themselves. But instead, they're mired in protocol and following proper procedure, requesting aid, requesting air support to defend Navarro, to attack these pirates. And I guess it just bums me out. Again, it's sort of like we're seeing that layer of bureaucracy that the New Republic has in it already at this point, where these X-Wing pilots at an airbase, sort of like a forward base in a sense, because they're there on the rim, they could spring into action. They could do something about these pirates right now, especially if that was their charter, to defend the spaceways from the pirates. Instead, Zeb sort of dissuades him from going through proper channels because they haven't been responding to requests for aid for weeks on end, as Zeb tells us. So Carson Teva takes it upon himself. He's going to go to Coruscant directly. which again, I'm nitpicking. I'm not going to lie. It's a nitpick. But it feels like a huge waste of time. Sometimes we are susceptible to using like hyperspace as sort of like this blink and you're there kind of way of transportation. But it's not. Flying through hyperspace from the outer rim of the galaxy to the near center of the galaxy takes time, and a lot of time at that. So again, they're wasting time going back to Coruscant when honestly they could probably just do whatever they wanted on the outer rim, because the New Republic has no idea what's going on in any sector of its space. It sounds like, there's another line. I think it's earlier when Karga is bluffing and saying that we're part of the New Republic. There'll be ships here before you know it. This is a bad idea for you. You got to get out of here. And Gorian Shard laughs at him and it says the New Republic can't even protect the mid-rim worlds. What's it going to do to the outer rim? And he says specifically they can't protect the mid-rim worlds from Pirate Nation. All right, so pirate attacks are on the increase throughout New Republic space. So the idea that these former members of the Rebel Alliance, again, there was protocols and a command structure in place and things like that, but a lot of times the Rebels did what the Rebels had to do. They sprang into action and they defended those who needed defending from the Empire, from pirates, from whatever. So the fact that both Zeb and Teva and everyone else in that base basically is just like, nah, we're just gonna wait for orders, kind of bums me out. But in the long run, it does sort of show more of that bureaucratic nonsense that the New Republic is already mired in. That's already showing its cracks about how this new government is doomed for failure. And it gets even worse once Teva gets to Coruscant and he meets with Colonel Tuttle, who seems like a complete pencil-pushing bureaucrat. Maybe was at one time a big shot caller in the rebellion, and I did really enjoy seeing Tim Meadows play this role. Tim Meadows is such, he has such mid-management level energy that it feels really, it just felt right for him to be this sort of like a pencil-pushing administrator, as opposed to like, now's the time we spring into action. No, that's not Tim Meadows. Tim Meadows is like, yeah, that's going to be a problem. That's who Tim Meadows is. That's kind of his wheelhouse right now. And again, he gets very much influenced by in his office. We run into Elia Kane, the amnestied Imperial operative, formerly working for Moff Gideon, though wink wink, probably still is. And she dissuades any action on Navarro because Navarro never signed the paperwork. They didn't sign the charter. They're not part of the New Republic. So again, the cracks in the New Republic, the cracks in this government are just widening with every single day. No small part is probably being helped along by these Imperial agents who I believe are in place throughout the New Republic government that are helping to widen these cracks. Because again, instead of doing what's right, they're like, no, they're on their own. Sorry, they didn't sign the charter, blah, blah, blah. It's unfortunate. It echoes a lot of real-world things, of course. And the fact that the government is sort of useless and ineffective also mirrors real life in far too many ways that I'd really rather not think about. And, I think perhaps as a tease, this is something we'll discuss more after The Mandalorian wraps up this season. I would sort of really like to dive into it. We'll get one of our podcasting friends on the show and sort of talk about just how ineffective the New Republic is, because it would be a fascinating conversation, I think, especially in context with the sequel trilogy that takes place down the road. But regardless of all that, I also sort of wonder, because, again, they alluded to it in episode 3, where we sort of caught up with what the goings-ons in Coruscant and Dr. Pershing, in the decommissioning of the Rebel fleet initially, or as it maybe you can know now, the New Republic fleet, right? Like it's peacetime. They think they've won. It's over. There's no conflict going on in the galaxy. So are there really the resources there to even do these things? It doesn't seem like it. It seems like the New Republic has put the cart in front of the horse, if you will. Do people still use that expression? Probably not, but Google it if you're not familiar with it. So they've gotten a little ahead of themselves is all I'm trying to say here. So they think the Empire's over. They think the galaxy's secured. But instead, because they're spread so far, they're spread so thin, not only is their empire not gone, and we're possibly seeing the early gestation period of the First Order, but Pirate Nation is running rampant throughout the galaxy. There's probably crazy amounts of Star Wars underworld activity, crime lords, syndicates, all the trappings of the Star Wars underworld are probably thriving right now with zero New Republic oversight. And the threat of the Empire is completely gone. I mean, in one sense, Palpatine sort of like fostered the Star Wars underworld in a sense, but the Empire always sort of loomed as like this hammer that could come down on them whenever it served Palpatine's purposes too. That's all gone. These criminals get to are basically running roughshod of the galaxy now because the tyranny is over, right? And they got these soft, these super soft rebels who are just like, these bleeding hearts, I suppose is maybe the word you wanted to say it. And the no one's scared of them at all. That the New Republic is a government without teeth. The Empire had teeth. So the idea that Pirate Nation's running rampant across the galaxy is fascinating to me and something that I'm really, really into. So Teva takes it upon himself to find some support for Navarro. He obviously can't do anything. His hands are tied. He won't get directly involved. So he's like, you know what? I'm gonna find my my bucket-headed friend Din Djarin, and I'm gonna persuade him to go help his buddy Greef Karga and the people of Navarro. And then so again, this is another little nitpick of the episode, because how does Teva know that R5D4 is with the Mandalorians? Is he just sends it like a broad distress message over old rebellion comm channels and R5D4's, oh yeah, like here we are, come find me, let's check it out, these guys can help. It's convenient. There's a lot of kind of conveniences in the early parts of this episode to kind of make the story move forward. I will allow it because I'm here for the ride. I'm here for the journey. But it was sort of interesting that R5D4, now in possession of Din Djarin, rats him out to a former master, a former partner, a former colleague. Teva says they worked together in the rebellion. Though it would have been an interesting moment, right? Had after Teva drops that revelation that a former rebel soldier is in their ranks, and like, what if one of the Mandalorians were to unmask, and we find out that it's like somebody that we know from the Clone Wars or Rebels or something else? That would have been like, whoa, crazy. But no, they just go the R5D4 route, and that's perfectly fine, perfectly acceptable. And I love that R5D4 is still part of the show, so that makes me happy in so many, many ways. But you heard the audio clip, we included it in here. Teva sort of, I don't know if he's like manipulating necessarily, but he knows that he can sort of poke Din Djarin into action, right? Get the Mandalorians to do something. I did like how, as he's leaving, though, he says, hey, listen, I found your covert, but I'm not going to tell anybody. Don't worry about it, even though I know you're going to leave. You got my word. I did sort of like that little touch to it, sort of showing some respect to the Mandalorians, people that probably haven't gotten a ton of respect over like the last 2 or 3 decades by the other people of the galaxy. So that was a nice touch. But this leads to the big meeting, right? What will the Mandalorians spring into action? Din tells them about the offer that Greef Karga made to him, the huge tract of land that Din is now thinking like, hey, if we do this, Greef will give us this land, and this could be our home. No more hiding in caves, no more hiding in sewers. This could be a pivotal moment for our people moving forward. And then it's Paz Vizsla's turn to speak, and he starts off very much making it sound like he is against this. He is against helping Greef Karga. He was there. He fought against Karga and the bounty hunters who were after Din and Grogu. In which, by the way, Grogu, not a big part in this episode. He's there. He's present. Not a lot going on there for him. The little one gets a few little shots on the camera, but by and large, Grogu's sidelined in this episode. He's in the action. He's with Din in the cockpit of the N1, but not a lot of Grogu stuff here. So Paz is giving his big speech, and then it turns, and he reminds these people, because it seems like the Mandalorians of the covert see with eye to eye with him that this is not their fight. They shouldn't be involved in this. Karga has been against them in the past. All these things. And then Paz Vizsla drops the "because we are Mandalorians," and I like that moment a lot. It really got the blood pumping. It got me fired up. I strapped my bucket on even harder at that one because I was like, yeah, I want to go fight some fools too. And then I realized it was midnight in San Diego and there's no fools to fight, but that's okay. Bucket was still was ready for anything. But that's our moment, right? And then it becomes a very action-driven episode from that point forward. So this action sequence, this battle on Navarro, takes up a big chunk of the episode, and it's great stuff. It's really good action, really well directed, fun sequences. Great to see the Mandalorians in action on the ground, in the air. I love watching them deploy from Bo-Katan's ship. I love seeing them on the streets of Navarro, engaged in combat. Just seeing those sweet T-shaped visors around every corner, blasting pirates, trying to liberate the people that are still in the city. The lizard monkeys helping, making them aware of ambushes. I liked all these little touches in the episode. I thought that sequence in particular was fantastic. As they've been doing in this entire season, the aerial combat is stellar. It's insanely well shot, well directed. With the N1 in particular, you really feel the speed of that ship more so than I think we ever have before. And I love seeing it cut across the sky now. It's become like a really, really cool bit of Star Wars magic now. I just love seeing that ship in action. And so with Bo and Din running air support, we get our big chunk of time with the Mandalorians on the ground. The Armorer gets in the action, trying to clear out Grief Karga's office where they've held up a position and started blasting people with heavy-duty cannons. Again, it's a great sequence. The Anzelians are watching from their little workshop. It's chock full of great stuff, and then you have, you're cutting that in with more stuff from Gorian Shard, and we see the return of Vane, who survived in the first episode and will eventually survive in this episode as well. So we're seeing a lot of things kind of shake out during this battle that lingered from the first episode. I can't say enough about it. It's good stuff. It's high quality action. It's Mandalorian brand action. It's tonally accurate to everything they've done before, but it sort of ups the stakes, right? Because we get to see the Mandalorians in action. Like, this is sort of, they sort of rose to the occasion to help Din and Grogu escape in episode 3 of season 1. But since then, the Mandalorians have been low key, particularly the covert. The covert Mandalorians have been very, very low key. They're trying to rally their forces, gather their strength, do all that stuff. But now we see them in action, and it's just really cool, and they're pretty darn effective fighters, and it just got my blood pumping. Just seeing, again, I'm still thrilled when I see live action Mandalorians engaging in combat. Like, this is the stuff I dreamed about for 20 plus years. So just to have it happening now is awesome. I can't wait. It makes me so happy every time it comes on the screen, and I can't wait to see more of it and how they raise the stakes, because that's what this episode's setting up. We talked about how this is putting the pieces into place, and how a lot of this season thus far. Now, again, we're 5 chapters into an 8-chapter season, so maybe it feels like a lot of table setting. But I think they've done a pretty darn good job of setting the table and telling interesting stories at the same time. People on the internet seem to be disagreeing with that assessment, but I think they're wrong. And I'll just say it right now. I think they're wrong. I think they're being impatient. I think they're being massively impatient, and we're going to get the payoffs that we think we are deserving of down the road. And I say that with mock derision, because we don't deserve Star Wars shows at all. Like, let's be honest. We're getting these because we are in an insanely fortunate period of time where we are lucky enough to have these things happen for us, and to get to be entertained by them. And it wasn't that long ago that we didn't have any of this stuff. So let's not get too entitled here with what we think we deserve as far as Star Wars shows go. All right? Just a little personal. I'm injecting a little bit of more personal opinion on things on that one. All right? But now let's go to the aftermath of the battle. The day has been won. The people of Navarro have rejoiced. Grief Karga welcomes the Mandalorians. He welcomes the covert to that massive tract of land he's giving them. saying that even if they don't no longer have a home planet, they have a home here on Navarro. And it's a great moment. And again, the people of Navarro seem really stoked to have Mandalorians around because, again, let's talk about it. As High Administrator, you know, we heard in the first episode of the season, he lost his marshal. Cara Dune got called into the special ops on the New Republic. Feels like he would have wanted to fill that vacancy sooner, come up with some sort of planetary protection for Navarro. Obviously, he knew Grief was aware of his past. He sort of suspected these pirates would have come knocking at some point or another. Getting some sort of, I don't know, defense in place probably would have been a higher priority for me. It is what it is. But now he's got Mandalorians on the planet. And if that's not a deterrent to pirates and raiders and anybody else who may come a knocking, Imperial Remnant, knock, knock, knock. Yes, I tried to do that on the wood, but whatever. You know, but now he's got Mandalorian, so he's good to go. Paz Vizsla tracks down Bo-Katan Kryze, who's been steadfast in following the way, because the Armorer has summoned her. And so Paz leads Bo-Katan down into the sewers, down to the old forge, you know, where we first sort of came into contact with the Covert ourselves as an audience back in season 1. And they begin to have a conversation, an interesting one, and the Armorer tells Bo-Katan to remove her helmet. And Bo-Katan is wary at first. Like, wait, I just got this thing back on. Now you want me to take it off? And you know, the Armorer asks, like, do you not respect my position? And so reluctantly, Bo-Katan removes her helmet. And they begin to have a very, very interesting chat. I'm going to play a stretch of it right now because this is setting up, in a big, bad way, what is to come. And it doesn't, I'll be honest, I had some, you know, we sort of talked a little bit about what may come between the Armorer, between Bo-Katan, what's next for the Covert. Let's go ahead and play the scene. And you know, it's not what we sort of speculated about. Or is it? A little bit of both. Right and wrong in some aspects, but let's go ahead and play it. Here we go.
I was taught that the mythosaur existed only in legends, and yet you saw it. It is a sign that the next age is upon us. Mandalore must all come together. You have walked both worlds. You are the one who can unite us.
So, big time decision from the Armorer to put Bo-Katan in this position. Now, I do still think Bo-Katan has worked very, very hard to put herself in this position as well. And it's sort of a little bit of a 180 from last episode when the Armorer seemed sort of dismissive of the notion that Bo-Katan had seen the mythosaur. And we sort of wondered, you know, or I sort of put out there that, you know, is this going to be a question of faith for Bo-Katan? Was it an actual vision? Did she actually see what she thought? Or is this something to test her faith in following the way and following the creed, right? It sounds like maybe we're not going to get that deep of an exploration on those particular themes at this moment in time, as it seems more clear cut now that perhaps after some time the Armorer has decided that, oh no, she's probably telling me the truth and I was just being super dismissive because I've always thought these were just legends. But I think the Armorer, as badly as anybody else, wants this next age to be here, wants to see Mandalore rise again. And now the Armorer believes that Bo-Katan is the one because she can walk between the two worlds. She's followed the way, and she's also got the ear of the other Mandalorians as well, the non-helmeted, the non-creed following. But the Armorer now believes that all Mandalore has to come together because the time is ripe to retake the planet. So everyone has to come together, whether you follow the way or not. Now, it'll be interesting to see how this shakes out with the different ideologies in play, or if there will be some sort of uneasy truce between them. Like, if you walk the way, you just have your helmet on, and if you don't walk the way, you're still a Mandalorian, we're still cool. How's that going to play out? How's that going to process? I would imagine there'll be some ideological clashing at first, but it's very, very exciting stuff. Now, I want to play the last little bit from the episode because I don't know if you guys were thinking what I was thinking, but I'll tell you what I was thinking after I play the clip. Hang on. Though before I do play it, I do like this sequence, right? Bo-Katan with her helmet under her arms, now walking through the crowd of Mandalorians that she just went into combat with, and they definitely seem to be judging. And she definitely seems to be nervous to be unhelmeted amongst them. But the armor is here to provide clarity on what exactly is happening. So here it is. Check it out.
Bo-Katan Kryze is going off to bring other Mandalorians in exile to us so that we may join together once again.
But she shows her face.
Bo-Katan walks both worlds. And she can bring all tribes together. It is time to retake Mandalore.
All right. So if you think that's pretty intense, you're right. It is pretty intense stuff right there. Great job by John Shirley on the score on this one. Like the music is phenomenal in this episode. Really liked it. Especially the way it up tempos there at the very end to emphasize the dramatic effects of what the armor just told us all about. The time to retake Mandalore. And again, this is exactly what Bo-Katan has wanted the entire time. I still have my questions. I still have my concerns about Bo-Katan. But it was sort of funny. Like, I don't know if you guys were in the same shoes I was in. As I'm watching as the armor and Bo make their way to her ship, through the crowd, through the Mandalorians themselves, now with Bo unhelmeted, if they were just going to walk up to Din Djarin and demand combat for possession of the Darksaber right then and there. I was very interested to see if that was going to happen. And you know, we're putting ourselves out there, right? If you go back a million years ago to the end of season 2, when Din Djarin got the Darksaber, I put out there that I thought Din would be the one to be able to walk between two worlds because he had unhelmeted himself, and I thought that'd be a thing moving forward. They obviously reversed course on that, making him apostate, making him renew his vows to the creed, and become helmeted all the time once again. So I don't know. There's still a chance that I'm, maybe right on this because I think Din Djarin's going to have something to say about the situation because, again, I still think Bo-Katan maybe isn't on the up and up about everything. I don't know, though. So are we are we setting up who's our hero on this show? I guess is the question that I have to ask. Is it Din Djarin or is it Bo-Katan Kryze? Love Bo-Katan, but Bo-Katan is a flawed character with a lot of baggage. And we've talked a little bit about it, and maybe it's time to kind of I think we'll get a chance to sort of reconnect with Bo's baggage as we shift back into rewatching Star Wars: The Clone Wars later this spring. But it does feel like these characters will inevitably come into conflict at some point, whether it's about the Darksaber or not. And Bo-Katan is a cunning warrior. I do not doubt that she could defeat Din Djarin in hand-to-hand combat, in any sort of combat. And again, we saw it earlier. Bo-Katan wields the Darksaber like a champ, and Din Djarin wields the lightsaber like a chump. But if our character, again, there's a lot of ways this could go, and predicting things and speculating is fun to a degree. Because, again, we could see the rise of the Mandalorian people, and then Din Djarin walks away from all of it, gives them the Darksaber, and is like, you know what? I'm going to go back to being a bounty hunter. I'm going to go solo. Me and Grogu, we're going to do our thing. And he just walks away from all of it. There's a lot of different ways this could go because that sort of follows our Western motif, that follows the way of a lot of samurai pictures where, like, the hero leaves at the end and just goes on the rest of his journey. Stays a wanderer, stays the character that goes from town to town helping the people. I don't know. I think there's a lot of stuff to come. for sure. Because as far as I know, there's no end game in sight for The Mandalorian. The word is that season 4 is written already. I've not heard that season 4 will be the finale, so I think there's more to come. I think the show is excellent, and I love this episode. I love what we're setting up, and I guess I just think that Bo and Din are bound to be in conflict at some point. We shall see. But what do you think? Is I know there's a faction of the internet that is big believers in Bo-Katan's right to rule. I think she's had her time. It didn't go well. But what do you all think? Is Bo-Katan the one meant to rule the people of Mandalore, to bring the people together and move them forward? Or is it Din? Is it Din, the man who doesn't want the burden, the responsibility, the pressure of being the leader? Is he the one who's the perfect leader because of that? So that's what I'm waiting to see. I'm waiting to see, are we going to see sort of a revelation with Bo-Katan kind of revealing her true colors here in a sense? Again, not that I don't think Bo's a great character and on the side of right in a lot of things, but I think there's a lot of gray with Bo, and we'll see how this shakes out. I'm really excited by what they are setting up moving forward. Now let's get to the big moment, like almost the equivalent of an after credit scene, of a post credit scene for The Mandalorian, and that is Carson Teva patrolling the spaceways, coming across the remains of a Lambda class shuttle that was transporting a specific prisoner. Hang on, let's play the clip. Oh, before I play the clip, though, really quickly, though, I do like that Teva's astromech has like a little probe droid port. I thought that was really kind of cool. The way they shoot the scene, maybe I'm nuts, it sort of reminds me of the boat scene from Jaws a little bit when they enter when Richard Dreyfuss's character enters the boat and they find the dead old guy whose name I'm blanking on right now. And I know Jaws inside and out. I can't remember his name. Ben? Was it Ben Carson? Something like that? I think. I don't know. Kind of reminds me of that, the way this scene's shot, because again, it's the hull of this Lambda class shuttle's cracked open. The bodies of the Republic troopers inside are frozen. They're just kind of floating there. But let's go ahead and play the clip.
I'll be damned. Flight times match the ship transporting Moff Gideon.
I knew it. You never made it to trial. There don't appear to be any survivors. And Moff Gideon's body is missing. This was an extraction.
Who were the perpetrators?
Scanning. I'm only seeing the remains of the flight crew. There appears to be something embedded in the cabin wall. Getting close on that. It's a fragment of Beskar alloy.
Are you saying that Moff Gideon was taken by Mandalorians?
Bonk, bonk. That's the Law and Order noise, just FYI. So the drama, right? Was Moff Gideon liberated by Mandalorians? We know that Koska Reeves is out there with the fleet that they stole in season 2. Or are other things afoot? Do members of the Imperial Remnant have Mandalorians in their employ? As Bo-Katan told us back in the beginning of this season, her former forces, the Night Owls, working as mercenaries across the galaxy right now. There's a lot to kind of unpack with this. A lot going on in this episode. Big time awesomeness. I love that little cliffhanger at the end because, again, Bo-Katan's out there. She's supposed to bring these people together. But it sounds like maybe there's some Mandalorians out there that aren't going to be all that interested in coming back to the tribe. Maybe they found some steady employment that they're pretty happy with in the employ of the Empire, perhaps. Or, maybe there's just another faction of big bad Mandalorians out there that we have been thus far unaware of that are out there pulling strings in a way that we didn't suspect either. There could be some big things coming up. And we speculated a lot already. I kind of want to, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole with this particular one because I think there's going to be some really neat stuff coming up in these next 3 episodes. Again, I like this episode. It's kind of got some knocks on it online already. There's nits to pick. There's always a nit or two to pick. I shared some of mine with you all on this, but just solid episode of the show. I really like the way you move things forward. I love the action sequences. The aerial combat's fantastic. You know, it's a little slow at the beginning as it seems like Teva is wasting some time going from the Outer Rim to Coruscant and back again. But, you know, whatever. That's sort of like a plot convenience, I suppose, just to make things happen. But it's 8 buckets for me. I'm digging this show. I'm digging the season, and I can't wait to see what's next. They're building to something big time, and it's gonna be super awesome. Stay with it, man. If you're watching the show, stay patient. Don't get upset with it. I know I'm talking to people who aren't even listening to this podcast, because everyone in Buckethead Nation, I feel like we're all on the same page. But if we're not, you know where to find me. Reach out. It is at Mando_Vision on Twitter, Instagram. Email the show, mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Another reminder to make sure you are liking, subscribing, following, and sharing the show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. Another way to support the show, a great way to support the show, sweet 5-star reviews. They help the small independent shows like us stand out, not get lost in the shuffle. Star Wars Nation in the podcasting sphere is massively huge, and all of us smaller independent shows, well, we thank you in advance for all the support you can give us. It means the best things are yet to come, because we get to keep making podcasts, and that's the important part. I think that's going to be everything. I think I got it all out. Yeah, nothing left on my list to really cover here, but I'm so excited for what's coming next. Next Wednesday can't get here soon enough. And reminder that we will be back very, very soon. Like I said, for probably a very quick turnaround to cover the 2-part finale of Season 2 of Star Wars The Bad Batch. That was an intense episode as well, and I can't wait to talk to you all about that next. All right, so we'll be back very, very soon. Thank you for listening. Thank you for the support. My name is Tom, and this is the Mandovision Podcast. Again, Narguy Tom. We'll talk to you soon. Remember, this podcast can only end one way. This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way.